Hey guys, welcome to a totally different type of punk rock radar, and it's just something John and I have been talking about here. Is just kind of reminiscing. John and I were in bands together for I don't know about what a decade, probably various different bands. And we kind of just wanted to maybe ask each other some questions we've never really talked about, or things we really dove into because when you're a band in your 20s, you don't really think about what you're doing at that point. We thought it might be interesting for some of you guys to hear some of our responses. So, ultimate low effort episode. We're not going to show you anything. We're not going to review anything, but we're just going to maybe have a little chat and hopefully you guys find some of the stories interesting or funny. So, so I guess I'll kick it off, John. So we played in a bunch of bands. We're not going to name the bands because we're not looking for exposure on a band that hasn't made music in like 12 years. So don't worry about that. But maybe one day you could do a great reveal for your followers. But one thing I always wondered, because like you and I were the primary songwriters, right? So just so you guys know, John played lead guitar, pretty much wrote all of the music, at least guitar riffs and stuff. And I was the singer and I wrote the lyrics. So one thing I always wondered was, I thought, I know you don't consider yourself like a super technically proficient guitar player, but I always thought you were really good at writing riffs. So I guess my question about like in the songwriting process and coming up with riffs and stuff, how much of it are you mindful of not ripping off everything because, everyone says punk always sounds the same. And then how much is like drawing upon inspiration and like, how did you kind of like walk that line, I guess?
Well, first of all, thank you. I appreciate the compliment. But I'm trying to think now because even last year we tried to restart the band and write some new songs, and it's always a line I cross, but it's always that it's very influenced by what I'm listening to at the time, which I think is evident on our 3 or 4 releases, how the sound has changed. So pretty much it usually starts, I would just pick up my guitar and just start playing around. Um, and God, I'm trying to think now. Really, well, Brian would always say, "Oh, this sounds like this sounds like this." So always in the back of my mind, I was thinking, "Who does this sound like? And is it a band that's big enough that other people would recognize it?" But I think I would draw most of my influence was from NoFX. How they had the two guitars. There's always a guitar playing something that goes along with it, but just like higher octaves. So I would use that as like a point of reference, but I think our stuff was always like a little heavier than that. So I would try to use some of the stuff NoFX did, but kind of take it maybe into like E flat or drop D and just make it a little heavier, make it our sound. But I did take a ton of influence from NoFX, Pennywise, and Green Day, and just kind of mix all those together and play it a little faster, a little heavier, so it wasn't a direct ripoff of those styles. So that's kind of what I did. Just start off playing a song I like, and then try to play around with those notes and see if I can make it a little different and make it a little more in our style.
That is funny that you bring up because I do remember Brian saying that. And by the way, Brian was our rhythm guitarist. He's one of my good friends, John's friend as well. And it's funny that he says that because Brian wrote one of our riffs, which was like a pretty iconic riff for our band, I guess, because it led to a feud with another band. And it turned out that we had both ripped off Thrice, I believe. So that's pretty funny. I think about that all the time, that kind of happened. Inadvertently ripped off Thrice, obviously, right? So we weren't trying to rip off Thrice.
Yeah, that is ironic because that's probably the one of our songs that sounds the most like another band. And yeah, he would be the one. It was always the Offspring. That sounds like an Offspring song because the Offspring used like every possible 4-chord thing that we were gonna do. The Offspring did it. So it is what it is. I mean, punk's been around since like the 70s now. By the time we were playing, it's been 30 years of bands doing 3 and 4-chord progressions. There's not a lot left to do. So it's all about just putting a little palm mute here or a little extra note here and there. Otherwise, you're just going to be playing the same stuff, which is fine because that's what we like. Lewis, my question for you, and we're just thinking about these on the fly. So what was the biggest fight you can remember in the band with either all of us or just you in particular with someone else in the band? Anything you could think of, anything that comes to
Oh,
mind.
I think you know what it is.
There's so
And
many, but yeah.
yeah, well, I mean, stupid shit you argue about, but the one that I recall, like, I mean, so we did kick out a band member and stuff, which, in hindsight wasn't like probably the coolest thing, but he was working and he was always missing practices, so we kicked him out. So, I mean, which was so stupid, like in hindsight now, like I feel bad, especially because, like me, you and I don't think we went through phases where we would kind of take the band seriously, but just personally, I never thought we were going to be a big band or anything. So I find it amazing that bands kind of have that outlook that they just know they're going to make it, because I don't think I ever had that. Maybe I'm just a naturally negative person, but I remember that at least being one thing that was pretty chaotic, and then trying to find somebody to fill in the spot, so that was a problem. But the biggest fight I can remember, which I feel bad about still, is when everybody got mad about you switching to a different pedal. And like there was like a band revolt about you using a Dimebag Darrell pedal.
Mm.
And of course, I'm the front man, so I have to be, and I'm sure, and maybe I'm misremembering, maybe I was annoyed about it too. But it's hard, now, I don't really remember the scenario, but I know I had to ask you to stop using it because everyone else hated it. So and I remember you being pissed, and like rightfully so, because you're writing all the guitar riffs. And I think if anyone else had asked you to stop using it, you probably would have said no. And only because I was also writing lyrics and doing stuff and dedicated to the band that you were like, okay, we'll maybe it's not worth the fight. But yeah, that's one that I remember, and I still feel bad about having to have that conversation with you about it because like whatever, like who cares? Like, and rest in peace, Dimebag Darrell. You were just channeling his energy. So it's that's one that I remember. Is that the one you were thinking of?
It's the one that sticks out most to me because I've gone through like these weird phases in the band. I'm always mostly into punk, but I get into these weird like 80s thrash phases and like alternative metal phases. And I remember I bought a Randall half stack and I bought the Dimebag Darrell. It was an overdrive pedal. So it did really change the sound of our band. Like we always had, I think Brian played a Line 6 Spider half stack. So you guys know the Line 6 metal sound that came out of that. And before that, I was using a hand-me-down that I got from Tyler. It was a Marshall JCM 800, which is, one of my favorite amps. I don't know why I felt the need to mix it up. So we kind of had like that stereotypical punk sound like Billy Joe Armstrong records with the JCM 800. So you can kind of see the way we sounded. So then switching from that to a Dimebag Darrell overdrive pedal, it was pretty dramatic shift. So I kind of understand it. And at the time, Lewis, I don't know if you remember, we had Mike had joined the band and he was playing with the China cymbal too. And we were writing like heavier songs. There's one in particular that I'm thinking of off the top of my head. So that's felt like a logical progression to me to get that pedal with a heavier sound. And but in retro, like just thinking back about it, I could understand it, but I remember like being really, really upset. I was like, who do you guys think you are? Tell me what pedals to use. But it wasn't like I was switching from like just like a Boss pedal to like a DoD distortion pedal or something like that. It was pretty dramatic. So
It was,
in my older age now, I could definitely understand where you guys are coming from with regards to the pedal. And going from a punk band to playing like a pretty I know Pantera is not super heavy, but that pedal was just ridiculous. Like you couldn't really even tell what I was playing. It was just really
It
fuzzy.
totally changed the sound of the guitar. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was, even I noticed it, and like we didn't have like the best practice space, right? I mean, it was okay. So you guys could never hear me. So, you kind of could hear the melody or whatever. So I don't know. But, honestly, thinking about that progression, do you think, like, I guess I'll ask the question too. I mean, talking about, because we progressed. So we kind of had a band before this band. We're not mentioning names. And it was our first band, like 18 or 17 or something. And it was really a really bad band. and we recorded songs. And I would say a lot of those riffs were really basic, and the lyrics were terrible. And it was probably what more in the style of Guttermouth
Yeah.
or just like speed party punk, right? And by the way, guys, if you want me to sing traditional, I'm not your man. I'm a very pretty weak singer. I think probably the band started kind of more heavy progression, most likely when we discovered that I could passably sing hardcore, right? Because that kind of changed
Hmm.
the direction of the band, I think, right? Which was all of a sudden I recorded a bunch of vocals where I was just yelling, and you guys were like, oh, that sounds way better. Let's just do that. That's kind of where we went, right? Is that kind of how you remember it too?
Yeah, yeah. I remember the first thing we recorded together. Like I think we recorded in your living room without drums. And then later on when we recorded at Tyler's house, the first band, and I don't think there was a lot of yelling on that one. But then
No, no, no. That's bad stuff.
yeah. And then yeah, once you started yelling, I can't remember the first song that was, but yeah, we're like, "Oh wow, like this completely changed the sound of our band. We actually sound decent."
That
But
was
yeah,
pretty
yeah,
funny.
that's exactly how I remember it too. It's just like, "Okay, well this works. Let's be like a hardcore punk band."
We totally just changed the sound for the next band. Like I always say, like I never thought we were the best band, but I would have given us the superlative of like the most improved band between that band's the first band's album and then our EP with the second band, right? I would say it was pretty
Yeah.
good, and with most of the same guys. I think the only one different was the drummer.
Mhm.
So it was pretty interesting. I think so.
Just to piggyback off that too, I remember on our MySpace, we had all of our influences listed, right? And it was like, all the Epitaph Fat bands, and everybody who would, comment on your wall would be like, "Wow, you guys are way heavier than all your influence. You don't sound like any of those bands." And it was just because that's what we could sound like. That was really the reason. Like we were all listening to standard, Epitaph Fat skate punk style, but that's just the direction it took.
Yeah, I
It's
would
funny.
agree. Like I mean, I think we wrote a couple good songs as the band. Like there's definitely songs I'm proud of, but if it was not my band, it would not be a band I would probably listen to, I guess,
Yeah.
normally. Like I would probably listen to it occasionally. I would say we were probably pretty close to something like, I don't know, Kill Your Idols, but a little
Mhm.
bit more melodic is kind of what I always thought. Or
Yeah.
maybe like a little heavier Good Riddance sometimes. I mean, I don't know. Good Riddance is one I always think about just because of some of the riffs and stuff, but maybe not quite in that ballpark. But yeah, I mean, it would be definitely a little heavier than what I was normally listening to because I was like a Bad Religion fan. I'm like loving melodic punk rock, and it was just totally out of left field for us to be making this music, but it was pretty fun, you know. So all right, so we played a bunch of shows. I don't know how many shows we probably played in the various iterations of the band. I would say we probably played at least 30 to 40 shows or something, right? Maybe more. I don't
Even
know,
more,
various
yeah.
times. Yeah, probably more. It's hard to keep track. And we never had ticket stubs for our own shows, and we never asked our friends to give us theirs, which is stupid. But I think I have two or three of them total. But I know that we played a couple shows, and one of our shows always stands out because we broke up at the end of the show. And John, I want to know if you want to tell that story to the audience because I think they would think it's funny and like how that day went down and like why it was like a big opportunity and then it turned into like the band breaking up and giving a homeless man like $35. So
Well, I mean, you're definitely the better storyteller and the better person at remembering, but I'll do my best and you could fill in the blanks and
yeah,
correct me where I'm wrong. But so guys, in Poughkeepsie, there's what's called the Chance Complex. And at the time there were three venues there. There was Club Crandall Street where we played all the time. There was the Loft, which was a newer place that was upstairs, slightly bigger than Club Crandall. And then the main stage was called just the Chance Theater. And we had been playing Club Crandall, the Loft, and we finally uh, built up enough rep with the promoter at the time, which was, I believe, was Rhythm Den, and they were gonna
yeah.
finally let us play the Chance. And that day, I don't think we had any warning. but our drummer decided he was gonna drive to Connecticut, maybe, or somewhere
Somewhere,
far
yeah.
to get 2 dogs the day of the show. And, which is already like, all right, what the fuck? Like, this is our biggest show. Like, we should be practicing a little, but whatever. So he's like, I promise I'll be there. I promise I'll be there. So we get to the show and he's not there. Um, I don't think he got there and maybe like a couple minutes before we played, but leading up to that,
it was 25. It was like 25 minutes before we were supposed to go on.
25 minutes before we're supposed to go on. So I think you set up his drums, right?
I did, yeah.
I got a hernia lifting all the equipment up from the ground floor onto the stage, which I later had to get surgery for. But yeah, right before our biggest show, I like blow something in my small intestine to get a hernia. It was just like an absolute disaster. I think we stunk it up from what I remember.
We stunk it up.
We were terrible. We played one of the worst shows we've ever played because A, I've got a hernia. B, Mike was driving from hours all day and just sitting down, completely the opposite of loose, I guess. I don't want to say tight because it's not tight.
Yeah.
And we just sucked on our biggest show we ever had. And then we broke up immediately after, all pissed off. I don't think Lewis, I think you and I
we got drunk.
Together.
We got drunk. We got drunk too.
Yeah.
So we did get drunk. Well, I don't know how drunk you got, but I'm assuming because you don't even really drink now, but you didn't even drink that much then, I don't think. But I used to drink, and I think I drank 2 or 3 40s because I was so mad. And then you even got in it because you probably had a hernia. So I think I brought a 40 on the stage and spilled it all over the stage and just said, fuck it. And we just kept playing and we stunk it up. Like we were bad. And then and the mic was like, why did you guys suck? It's like the best question. It was so funny. Yeah, we were not good. And I think we did, like me and you were not mad at each other. I don't think, we all like Mike now. It's not like a thing, but we were definitely mad at Mike after that day. Right. So, we remember we walked out and we had made like, I don't know, $100 or $120 profit, which was pretty good. And I think we each took $20 and then we had an extra 20. So I just gave it to this homeless guy. And he goes, what do I have to do for it? And I was like, nothing sexual, just take it.
It was Spam Johnson. Spam Johnson.
Probably was Spam, yeah.
I think
it was too, yeah. So, I think he thought we wanted like him to fight or do something for it, but we just gave him $20, and I said, "Good, you did something good with some of the money." I think about that show all the time. I mean, it is kind of funny. Like, it was like a big opportunity to play main stage, but like it wasn't like with a big band. Like, you got a chance to play with way bigger bands at the smaller club shows. Mm-hmm. So we got to open up for like national touring bands, which was obviously cooler and I think way bigger shows, but it was just kind of like a prestige thing to say we had got to play the main stage, right at that point. So, I mean, it's a pretty funny story.
I think so. I could be wrong here, but so guys, Matt was never in the band with us, but I think this may have been the show Matt was supposed to come on, and we were playing a Leftover Crack cover of Atheist Anthem. And he had chickened out at the last minute. He was going to come on and sing with you. Was that this show? Like because I feel like that was at the chance.
It was the plan, and I think he had practiced with us at least once. I don't even think we ended up playing it, right? Because he wouldn't do it. So I don't think we did.
We didn't play it. I don't think we eever played it.
It would have been the wrong crew anyway, because I think we were playing with a Christian band, right? So
I have no idea.
No, what are you gonna do? Yes, I do recall that, but I always wanted Matt to get involved and do a song just because it was something for him to be involved in. I mean, it was like it dominated a lot of our time back then too. I mean, because we practiced every week, right? And it was a couple hours, and we used to practice at my my parents' house or your house. My parents' house, we used to practice in my deceased grandfather's room in the garage that had gotten cleared out. So it turned it into our little studio. And at your house, it was your garage and that sweat box. And that was a good time too. So it was a lot of fun.
All of my neighbors would come to my mom after we were done practicing. She's like, "You got to tell them to stop. You got like it can't be this loud." And you know like when you're competing with the drums, it has to be that loud. And in a garage, it's just going to amplify. And at the time, my at my mom's house, the garage would just face my neighbors. Like it wasn't a garage that
Oh
faced
yeah.
the road. It faced this way, like directly at my neighbors. Like I can only imagine the like assault of terrible music that was
Oh,
played
we're
in
not
that.
going to name names, but like fuck those neighbors anyway. So this is a side story. These are the neighbors. John was on vacation in what, New Jersey or Maryland,
Yeah, I was in
and
Ocean City, Maryland. Yeah.
yeah, so he's got some dirtbag friends we all had when we were in high school. No offense to you dirtbags if you're listening, but they came over and John wasn't there, and they went to these neighbors, and the kids were what, 2 or 3 years younger than us. They said, "Oh, can we borrow your bikes?" And the kids were like, "Yeah, no problem." Now Sean was there that day, by the way.
I didn't
Sean
know
was also
that.
my friend Sean. John's friend Sean was in the band briefly, but Sean was good friends with John's neighbor when they were kids. He was there that day, and Sean tells him, "You're never going to see those bikes again." And he's like, "No, no, no, they'll bring them back." Well, long story short, those bikes are gone. They're gone. These kids were not bringing those bikes back. They have no reason to bring these bikes back. These kids don't even know their names. So the neighbors came over and demanded that John's mom replace the bikes while John was in Maryland. Like, I mean, I think about this story all the time, and that family was a perpetual family of victims.
Well,
Is basically their story.
from what I remember, they actually called the police on me. And my mom was like, "Yeah, he's hasn't been here like all week. Like I was in Ocean City for like 10 days at the time, and yeah, I had absolutely nothing to do with it. I mean, we were all shady characters back then, but
Yeah, yeah.
for once, I was completely innocent in this scenario. So yeah, you're right. And
Ah,
maybe they
we weren't thieves from people. Like,
no no
so
no
I
no.
no, so we were good. So
We were shady, but not that shady.
shaded. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, there's one other thing I wanted to touch on. I don't want this to run too long, but if you guys like, we have several other things we can continue on. But Lewis, I want you to tell us what you remember about this legendary Ska Sunday show that we
God.
appropriately played. I believe maybe in either 2005 or 2006 at Club Cranel. One of my favorite memories of the band. So why don't you fill us in on what you remember about Ska Sunday?
So yeah, Scott Sunday was not a good fit for us. I think I think the reason that we did get on the show, and I could be misremembering, was we wanted to play with the leftover. We wanted to play with leftover crack, and it would not give us that show unless we sold a lot of tickets for Scott Sunday. So I guess they hadn't sold like that many tickets, and it was Big D and the Kids Table, and then a bunch of local ska bands. And I'll mention at least want to give them a shout out. I doubt they're a band still, but we'll talk about them in a second. But so we ended up selling like 50 tickets or 60 tickets. Like, because we may not have been a good band, but we were a pretty good businessmen at moving tickets. We would hit the malls. We would walk around the malls and sell tickets to like kids in punk clothes and stuff. That was pretty funny. So we go to play this Ska Sunday show. We did get the Leftover Crack show, by the way. And we did much. That was our best show we ever played.
Yeah.
We've kind of touched on it before.
Oh, so this was 04 then. 03 or 04. Yeah. I'm way off.
We were the new band.
Yeah.
We weren't the old band. So we did have one song we did with the old band that was like a ska song that we thought about bringing back. I don't know if we ended up playing it because that song was not really that good anyway. It's hard to soar with the Eagles when you're surrounded by herpes. I don't think something like that. It was a really juvenile sophomoric song. I don't even know if we have it recorded anywhere. So it's pretty bad. Regardless, so we played this show with the ska bands, and we sold the most tickets because nobody sold tickets. So we were going on right before Big D. Big D was not nice to us. Like we went to go like say hello and blah blah blah. And they were not having it, and I understand like they don't want to talk to every band or whatever. But most bands that we did get to play with were like at least like, hey guys, like cool, like blah blah, and like at least made chit chat. Like they were like standoffish, right? Whatever. So we were not happy about that. And the band that went on before us was called Kicking Sicily, and they were not very cool either, like at least by our gauge. And who knows? We were probably dicks, but we didn't think they were very cool. And they're playing, and they have like no one there to see them. It's like I think everyone in there was like our friends, basically, right at that show, right? So it was pretty bad. It was pretty uneven. So after every song they played, I would just scream, "You kicked the shit out of Sicily on that one." And the guy got mad on the stage, and he said, "You have to play next." I was drunk, I think, again, and I said, "I don't care. These are all my friends," or something. Something bad. I was a dick. No, we played the show this Scott Sunday, and this isn't exactly this story, another story, but we'll talk about that too. But Scott Sunday, so we ended up. I might be conflating the stories, but we finally play, and we finish, and our friends were there, so they liked it or whatever, pretended to like it as your friends are supposed to do, right? And we just left and took everybody with us. So Big D had to go on to what? Maybe there must have only been like 15, 20 people left in the show at that point. Now, I know we've conflated this story with the other one. I don't know if it's the same night, but I don't know if you wanted me to talk about when Matt got knocked out.
I'm almost positive it's this night. I think
it might be.
I think he wasn't there when we played. I think did he get punched during our set?
He got punched during our set. So
okay.
You don't know, and this is what memory's hard here. But one other story, and I'll talk about it, was we did play another show, and it may have been Scott Sunday, and it may not have been. We played a lot of shows. It's hard to keep track. And that Scott Sunday one stands out just because I think when we finished, just to finish that story, when we finished up our set, we're like, I think I said on the mic, "All right, guys, let's get out of here and not watch Big D or something." And we left, like, to the crowd. Like, it's like the funniest shit you could say. I still think about it like being funny. But regardless, the other show where Matt played, Matt didn't play. He was with us. We had a circle pit going, and Matt was in the circle pit. And our drummer is from the Czech Republic, and he has a lot of friends who are also from the Czech Republic. Real tough guys. These are tough guys, and very tough. And I guess he didn't understand that if you stand on the edge of the circle pit, there is a chance you could get hit by a stray elbow or a body. And generally your response shouldn't be to attack that man. But when Matt came around the next time in the circle pit, this guy laid Matt out onto the floor, like caught him back-footed, circling around, and gave him a concussion. Like he had to go to the hospital. Like Matt's girlfriend had to pick him up off the floor. We were playing a show, so we didn't know how serious it was. Like we were joking around. Matt got hit in the face, ha ha ha. And then we get off to like, that dude got a concussion. We're like, oh my God, we have to get to the hospital. So we all went to the hospital to see that he was okay. And luckily it was all right. He just bumped his noggin. I don't think Mike invited his friend to the show again after that. But this night was a disaster, right? So Matt gets injured. We're not, he's our friend. We don't want him hurt. So we have to go see him. He's fine. He's just knocked out. So I'm there with my girlfriend at the time, and we park at the hospital. Going to see Matt. We're in there for maybe 25 minutes. We come out. Her car is broken into. They had smashed her window open. They had stolen her car radio. She had left her purse in the car for some reason. So they stole her purse, her wallet, her iPod, her digital camera, and her cell phone, because at this point, cell phones were not cameras, if you guys recall. So they were not good cameras, at least. So she had her digital camera with her. This is like 2004, 2003. So she's, of course, now emotionally devastated. Matt's got a concussion. I hope we played well, because I don't even remember really anything about the show, because I just had to deal with the aftermath. So the end of that whole story was we came back the next day to the hospital where her car had gotten broken into. And there was like a little woods to like the left of the parking lot or whatever. So I go to look down the hill, and there's like a couple mattresses, I guess, where homeless folks sleep or hang out or whatever. I don't know how they got down there, but it's a little forest, little hideaway. And we found her purse down there, and luckily we're able to recover at least her like ID. And they didn't even bother taking her credit cards, because I guess they figured they got a good enough score with everything else. But yeah, that was a really terrible night. That is show night that I so remember just being a fucking disaster. I mean, the disaster shows, they definitely don't outnumber the good ones, but they're the ones that I remember the most. Those disaster ones and like shows we ended up not. I got sick one time. We couldn't play a big show. Like these are the things you always end up remembering and stuff like that. It's just kind of fun.
Yeah, I remembered almost the same as you. And hearing back these stories, I have to wonder, are the reason that these bands maybe weren't receptive to us partially our fault? Like the more I hear the stories, the more I was like, man, we kind of provoked them a little bit. And I know, like, I'm definitely not the most friendly, outgoing person there is. I know maybe the least, well, Brian's probably the least friendly and outgoing in the band, but just think of like the group of people we had. Like, none of us are particularly like, I would say, friendly people. Maybe outside of our bass players, both of them, I would say, are probably the most outgoing, and friendly in the band. But like, how much of it do you think was on us for the way we kind of handled certain things in the band?
I mean, even when we were a bad band, we knew we were bad and we were still assholes. Yeah. So I think it was kind of like the whole, like what's it called? Like, what's the word I'm looking for here? Like the whole like role that we were looking to play with the band, like kind of like this alpha dog of punk thing. I think it was kind of like our perspective was like, if we just kind of look like we're that hard, maybe people will like it. I think was kind of our approach. And it's kind of silly now. I think it would be a way different band. And honestly, we didn't talk about this, but after that band broke up, John and I ended up doing side projects, just me and him, or with studio musicians usually. And all that stuff was so much more lighthearted and not aggressive and fun and approachable and stuff. And I think we would have had a much different outlook. I don't know. It was just kind of like, we're this hard band. We kind of have to be hard. So I think a lot of bands probably go down that route. I mean, I always think about the Transplants interview with Nardwuar. I don't know if you remember that one, but like just trying to look real hard. And I feel like that's probably how we were with some bands. But, and then we did have bands that we were friends with in the scene too. So I don't want to say that we were jerks to everybody. So, but yeah, I don't know. I think, we were trying to fake it till we made it, right? Type of thing.
Well, you made me think of it like, we'll probably stop this one pretty soon. But for next time, if people like this, I think a really funny theme, all the feuds we had with the other local bands.
Oh yeah, we can do that.
There's quite a few, like especially like in the early years, like I don't want to get into it now because I've there's at least 3 bands that we feuded with, like pretty hard.
At least 3. Yeah, pretty hard. Yeah, we had feuds. Yeah, it was like Real Housewives over here.
Like the bands we feuded with greatly outweighed the local bands that we were friends with. Like maybe some of them turned into friends, but like just think about it. There was always something. The other band even that wasn't local but had the same band name as us. That's another feud that happened. Like there was a lot of shit talking with them.
Oh, I forgot about that one. That one you just brought out. That one's hilarious.
There's so yeah, guys. If you like this, guys. The next time, I think we're going to do it anyway, because I want to talk about those, all the feuds, and like we talked about in-house kind of bickering between us, but there's way more. I think every one of us had like at least an interaction or two. There's one that I think Matt won't want us to tell.
Probably not. I had to be I was the most hated member for sure by all those bands.
Definitely. I won't dispute that. Yeah.
Well, that's because I'm the front man, man. Yeah. So I had to take the brunt. I mean, what are you going to hate the drummer? They didn't even know how to say his last name. So.
All right. So we'll wrap this one up here. If you guys like this, make sure and let us know either with a thumbs up or a comment, or just DM me on Instagram. Let me know what you thought of this video, because it was a lot of fun to do. So I'd love to do more like this. I think we've got at least 4 or 5 of these we could think of. So that's gonna wrap up. Lewis, anything closing thoughts or anything else you want to say before we wrap it up?
Oh, we gotta save some of the good stuff for next time. But this was
Yeah.
a lot of fun, and I'm a much different man than I was as a young man in a band. So I'm not nearly as unfriendly as you're going to find out in these next few episodes. So
Yeah.
I hope you look forward to those.
All right, guys. So that's gonna do it, and I'll just close out by saying apologies to Kicking Sicily and a Big D, because as I'm thinking, I'm sure we are at fault. So if that's the case, and if by some miracle anyone in any of those bands is watching, then we apologize. We're sure that you don't remember us, so it's not important. But that's it. Uh, we're done. Apologies to Big D. Apologies to Kicking Sicily, and we'll see you next time.